The DateTime variable is possibly the most specialized variable type in C#. It is, as you would expect, used to store dates and times. Date and time are often the most difficult things to work with in programming, since date and time systems are very complex. Fortunately, the DateTime variable does most of the work for you. To begin, open the Shining Stone sample file from your Sample Files folder. And open the code behind file of by.aspx if it isn't open already. Now remove any code from the page load event handler and create a DateTime variable with the following code: DateTime test datetime equals datetime.now response.write test datetime. The now property of datetime always contains the current date and time. This code will create a new datetime variable containing the current date and time and display it on the page when the page loads. Note that if you create a datetime variable without setting its value will be null. You'll learn about null in Lesson 5.12. Unlike the other variable types that you've worked with so far, there isn't a simple way to manually assign a value to a datetime variable. You will almost always create a date based on the value of a calendar control or using datetime.now. If you wanted to create a new datetime variable containing an arbitrary date and time, you'd do so by specifying arguments when creating a new instance of the datetime class. You'll learn about creating instances of classes in Lesson 6.2. Now view the page in your browser and you can see the current date and time. On my screen you can see the 22nd of October 2013 in the UK date format. The date is appearing in the UK format because my computer is configured to use the UK format. If your computer is configured to use a different date format, you will see the date in your format. Different calendars are used by different countries. The DateTime object supports all of these, but it will default to the calendar that is used by the computer that the web application is running on. It's important to bear in mind that the web server that you eventually place your site on may be using a different calendar to the computer that you are developing your application on. ASP.NET calls the regional rules for formatting dates the culture. You can use the globalization tag in your web.config file to make sure that your site always runs using your chosen culture, instead of using the culture of the server that it is running on. Close your web browser now, and you're going to use the addDays method to add 3 days to your DateTime variable. The DateTime variable has several methods that allow you to easily manipulate the date and time stored inside it. Add a new line after DateTime test datetime equals datetime.now and add the code test datetime equals test datetime add days 3. This code adds 3 days to the value of the test datetime variable. This means that the result that is output to the page should be 3 days later than today. View the page in your browser again and the date that is displayed is 3 days later than the current date. Close your web browser now. Note that the DateTime type has several other add methods. These methods allow you to add months, years, etc. to a DateTime variable's value. Sometimes you'll just want to get a single component from a date, such as the month or year. The DateTime variable has properties that allow you to easily extract each component of a date. Change response.write test datetime to response.write test datetime .month. You might notice in the IntelliSense menu that the month property is an int value. Now view the page in your browser, and you can see the month displayed as an integer. Close your web browser now. All of the components of the date have their own property. For example, you could get the year of the date using the testDateTime.year property. The datetime variable offers a few methods that will format the date in different ways. You're going to use the toShortDateString method to display the date in a shorter format. Change the line response.write testDatetime.month to response.write testDatetime.toShortDateString begin brackets, end brackets. This will display a shorter date string. The datetime variable also offers similar methods such as toShortTimeString and toLongDateString. View the page in your browser once more, and you can see the date displayed in a shorter format. You can customize the date string in a more sophisticated way by using the toString method. You'll learn how to do this in Lesson 5.9. Close your web browser now. Remove all code from the page load event handler and close Visual Studio, saving your changes if prompted. You've now completed Lesson 5.7. Use DateTime variables.